Alright, welcome back to a new TouchDesigner tutorial. And in this one we're going to look at particles, interactive particles, using the Kinect. In my case the Kinect version 2, but this would also work with the Kinect Azure. And I can use my hand here to interact with these particles, and yeah, it's really cool and a lot of fun. And I could also, I'm just gonna show you quickly, change the threshold here and then go and stand up, and then I could use my whole body to like interact with these particles and make them move. And yeah, we're gonna look at like how to style them or like design them in the way that you want them to look. And before we actually get started, I'm gonna talk a bit about this and the background of this, and why we're using this technique, because there's already quite a lot out there on like particles and on the Kinect. So I'm just going to show you different approaches and link those videos in the description, and then talk a bit about like why we're using this approach. So first off, there is this easy movement detection video by No One's Image, which is which is great because it's very simple, short, and just uses a webcam and doesn't actually use a Kinect. So if you don't have a Kinect, then I would suggest looking at this approach. It also features some particle creation here. Then we have this other video by the Interactive and Immersive HQ, which features this guest video here. And yeah, that's also about the creation of like particles, and this is also using a Kinect, and also like composites that with noise and works with instancing. So that's a different approach. And generally, if you just search for videos with like Kinect particles or optical flow, there's definitely stuff out there, but I haven't really encountered this exact technique anywhere. So a few weeks ago, at the end of December, I made this installation in Dubai in an entrance of a bar. And what's happening here is that we have an interactive floor. So we have projectors in the top projecting visual that we're going to look at on the floor. And if a person walks over, the particles are being pushed away. So just like in this video. So yeah, when I walk here over the particles, they are being pushed away from my body. So in this case, we actually had two Kinect Azures and a bit of a different software setup as well. But I'm going to show you how to make a similar visual, and how to generally work with this interactive kind of thing. So why we're using this Kinect approach is this is not just good for having an interactive floor, but it's really like, yeah, I think it's the best for that. But also having just being able to get rid of the background noise, because we are using the Kinect depth map, and that means we can set thresholds of how far the data is sort of like how far we're actually looking to include data. So we have this threshold top, and when I move like over a certain threshold, then I can interact with it, and if I'm like behind that threshold, it doesn't take that data into account. So this is really useful if you're working with an interactive floor, for example, because if we look back here, we have the cameras looking from above. So like the Kinect cameras looking from above, and if they were just normal cameras, they wouldn't have depth information, at least not yet. I guess with AI that sort of would work as well, but anyways, we would also pick up the visual itself and therefore sort of create a feedback loop. So when we look at people walking on our installation or like on our projection, we don't want to have the projection data also be included in what we're looking at. So we just want to have the data of the moving people, and therefore we need to have some kind of depth information to like cut off wherever cut off sort of behind a certain threshold. So only look for like 2 meters, and yeah, anything after that is not taken into account. So as you can see now, I'm moving here in the background. I'm moving here, and yeah, if I get closer, I'm being taken into account, and if I change the threshold, then I'm also being detected here. So that is very useful if you're working with that, and also if you want to have an installation and there's a lot of background noise. So basically, like here, so there's stuff in the background, and there's maybe other people walking. You might not want to have them included, so you're going to need some kind of depth information. So I'm going to turn this down again, so we just have the hand movement here. All right, another reason to use the Kinect instead of just the camera is that we can use the Kinect at any in any lighting conditions. Yeah, it doesn't matter how bright the room is; it's going to work even in complete darkness because it's using lasers. So that is very, very useful if you work I don't know, in any kind of dark environment. So yeah, and also it's just a simple setup. As you can see here, we just have a few nodes connected, and we still have a lot of room to play. And yeah. All right, let us begin with the actual tutorial. So I'm gonna delete this all and add a Kinect top here. And yeah, I'm going to mirror this image, and just gonna quickly say hello. This is me in my room. Yeah, and just make sure the image is set to depth, and the image is mirrored, because otherwise it's gonna feel weird and like wrong, basically. All right, then what I want to do is add a transform. This isn't very necessary, but as you can see here, we get this strong noise at the corners. You might not have this, but we can just sort of hack our way around that and just scale this up a bit, so we reduce that. Then I want to add a threshold, the thing I just talked about, and usually this is set to less, so we could add a level and invert this, but a simpler way would be to change the comparator to greater, and then just go down with the threshold. So this might be counter-intuitive at first, but you know, so if the higher the threshold, the more it's going to include in this way. So right now, if we set it to 0, it just, you know, my hand is the brightest thing. Don't worry about all this noise in the background. You can see there's a lot of white stuff also going on, but you know, we're going to get rid of that with the optical flow. All right, so I'm going to add a blur here, and change the blur to like the pre-shrink to 4, just so we have a blurred image. And then I'm going to go to the palette and go to tools, and down there we have the optical flow and the particles GPU. Let's drag the optical flow in here, and let's actually also drag the particles GPU in here, because that's what we're going to use and work with. Okay, so let's connect the blur to the optical flow, and as you can see, now we get this weird green, red, orange sort of image, which is perfect. This is exactly what we want. But you can also see we pick up a lot of noise, so we can go ahead and change the threshold to like 0.2 or 3, and now really only whatever moves rather strongly. So if I just move very slightly, it's gonna, yeah, the more I move, the more it's gonna pick up. So I'm waving like an idiot. Okay, so cool, this is working nicely. We're going to come back to the other parameters later, and we're going to connect this to the particles. But before that, there's quite a few things I want to set up in the particles. And first I want to color this by pressing C, so just so I know these are the important ones. Same here for the fresh, maybe. So the most important one is the particles GPU. Also, let's add an RGB key and a null, just so we can see what's happening in the background. Let's also go to our particles GPU now and change the resolution. If you do have a commercial license, you're able to change this to something higher. And Let's also go ahead and turn on show emitter source. It's not going to change anything now, but you're going to see that in a second. Before we dive into here, I want to show you two things. We have these inputs, the SOP input and a in Optical Flow. And this is what we're going to use. This is perfect for us. We could also use the SOP input to, you know, drive our 3D geometry, which is like our emitter basically. But in the making of this video, I discovered this works badly. I preferred going in there and actually changing it in there. If you find a way to work with this perfectly, then let me know. Okay, so before we dive into there, I also want to change this external force to 0. Just set this all to 0. And also we don't really need the turbulence magnitude, because right now they're like bouncing around there. If we turn off the turbulence magnitude, set that to 0, they're not going to bounce around anymore. Okay, so great. Now we just have a black screen. Let's see what's happening. Don't worry, there's a lot of nodes. We're just interested in a very few of these. So let's go to the very left here and have a look at this grid. Right now you don't see anything, but if you make it viewer active, you're going to see it's lying flat on the floor. So let's change this orientation to XY, and you're going to see, oh my, like this weird structure happening. That's because we have this chop tool, which we don't really need for this sketch. So let's just bypass that. And because we have set this render flag up here to show emitter source, we see this green wireframe of our emitter, which is this grid. And why is it not centered? That's because on the transform, the Y is set to 2. Let's change that to 0. Let's go to our grid now and change the size to 1.9 by 1.6 by 0.9. Jesus. Okay, because our parent is also in this aspect ratio, 16 by 9. So now we get this nice rectangle, and now we can maybe change the rows and columns to 100. And let's also go to the transform and make this bigger. So if we change this uniform scale on a transform, it's going to grow. And I would just suggest setting this to 3, so it fills the whole screen. If we now go back and change the show emitter source to off, we can now see more or less our whole screen is being covered well with particles. It's always in the center, it's a bit more. I'm not entirely sure why that is so, but you know, it's fine. Okay, I'm gonna go to the texture here and change this to square. And then I want to go to the particles and just make like 10,000 for now, and just go down with the min and max size. So we're gonna come back to this and style this a lot more. Now I can use my optical flow and put that into the optical flow input here. Nothing's gonna happen first, but now if I move my hand, you can see, oh nice, I am interacting with this. We can also go to forces here and change the input magnitude to 0.05, and now we're like, our hand has more impact basically. So it's quite a mess. We might want to even go up with the offset here, and yeah, we're gonna style this more and change the behavior. So let's go here and change the number of particles to like 500,000, and go down with the particle size min to like 0.005, like 0.002, and it's to like 0.009, something like that. So now if I change this, if I go here with my hand, you can see this looks really nice, like powdery snow or something. Yeah, you can see these weird borders. They really trigger me. I hate stuff like this. I don't know why that is, because technically our emitter is covering the whole thing, but apparently for some reason we need to go to the camera here. So inside of the particles GPU, go to the very right, find the cam one, and go to X form and change the 5 to 4. That's all you need to do really. And now we have, now this works nicer. So you might just want to like test out what works. So even something a bit higher should still, yeah, just to get rid of that. So maybe 4.8 is actually enough. Cool. And now one thing you kind of see is that the Kinect really doesn't have a very high frame rate. So the Azure is a bit better with this, but you can see that really like every frame. So to get rid of that, not completely, but at least make it a bit better, you can use a blur and change this to like 3 and 10 or something, and then it's a bit better. It's not much better, but yeah. Okay, so let's now look at some more behavior stuff. So we have this thing called drag, which is really my favorite parameter here, because right now these particles are really quite like flowing around quite a lot if you go over with your hand. And if you change this drag to like 0.9, you're gonna see they don't like move around as much. They sort of just stay, and you just influence them a lot less. And you can change now the force to something higher, maybe like set this both to like 5, and then go down with the drag even more to like 0.7, and then it's really different the way you interact with it and the look. So it's really, I really like that. It's really fun to play with the drag. The drag. Sorry about that. Oh god. It just came out there. So I'm gonna use a keyboard in chop and use this channel on the pulse, and now I can press 1 to reset the particles, which can be very useful. Alright, so that's one way to change behavior. The other thing is you can also add some turbulence. So let's change this to like 0.05. And now you can see they're moving even though I'm not even interacting with it. So you can change the particles sort of default state with that. And you can change the turbulence to like 1. So this is very similar to my audio reactive particles tutorial. Now this look. Yeah. Cool. Just play around with more of these stuff. You can of course add some wind and make them move in a direction, or you know, come towards you if you change the Z value, stuff like that. Just play around. Okay, before we end this video, I want to show you how you can really change the look of this more drastically. So you can go ahead and maybe make a lot more particles, a lot less particles, like 10,000, and change the min and max, especially the max size, to something higher. Let's go ahead and get rid of the turbulence. Let's look at the render here, and we have a few options to select different different textures. So we're selecting the square right now. We can change this to circle, snow, leaf, or custom. And yeah, these are all like, they look cool. As you can see here, you can't really see, but just trust me. This is just one texture, so we just have like one how's it called, snow thing, snowflake, oh god, snowflake. And with the leaves we have different ones. I'm gonna come back to that in a second. One thing I want to change here is the fade in time, maybe to like 0.5, because if I just have this at the lowest value, then they're sort of flickering or like coming into existence very quickly. So just kind of pop in. You can really see that if they're close. So change that to 0.5, and then they like fade in more. So the more you can even set this to like 6, and then they're really slowly fading in. Cool. And the other thing here is, if I yeah, two things here. If I reset this, then you might see, especially on the snow one, there is some, you might not see that in the video very well, but if you do it yourself, you can see there's some errors in there, some glitches, some black parts. So for small particles, the compositing ordered independent transparency works very well. But for the big particles, if I make this like even bigger, I would change this to no depth test. I think that looks a bit better for the bigger particles. So that's one thing. The other thing is that you might want to have all the particles look towards the camera. You can already see we have this face camera. You can just turn that on. But then you can also see this looks very static somehow. It looks very much like it is, you know, it's just one texture being copied many times. So I would suggest not using this, turning that off, and going to forces and setting all of the rotation of the Y and the X to 0, and maybe give a bit more rotation speed on the Z. So if I change this to 0.1, you can see they're all like spinning around themselves. So it's a bit less static because you can't really see that it's just one texture that much. All right. Now you might have noticed we just have 4 different textures to choose from. So, you know, if you make an installation, you probably want to have more options. So what you can do is you can use, for example, a circle. Let's say we want to use this circle as a texture. We can just create it, change the color maybe to blue, and now we can see on the texture we have custom as an option. And now we can use the circle, just drag it in there, and now we have blue circles. And of course we can change like the look and feel of this any way we want. Alright, let's get rid of the circle again. That's one way. The other way is to, you know, just leave it the way it is, and actually diving in here and changing the texture, because right now we just changed it to, again, one texture only. So same as the snow or like the circle, it's really just a circle. For the leaf, for example, we have different ones. So the cool thing is if we just go in here, we can make that ourselves. So we can select all of these. So go to the top right of the network and select all of these ones. And maybe drag them up a bit so you have like a bit more, like it's a bit cleaner, better to see. And so what we just want to do here is like anything that's being like fed into here is gonna be used as a texture. So what we can do here is just copy and paste the leaves. Let's just call it bananas, because that's what we're gonna do. And let's just put those in there. And now let's dive in here. And we can see, okay, we have 5 different leaf PNGs. And they're being fed into the switch, which is just changing really fast. And then they're being sort of stored into a text 3D, so like a 2D texture array. So we can just make new ones here. So we can just like add a movie file in and put that in there and make sure to unlock this. And let's get rid of all of these. Let's change the scale on this fit a bit, and maybe even translate this so it's like centered. And now we can just copy and paste this, put that in here. And now we can add an HSV adjust, copy that as well. And now we can like make one pink and the other one blue. And what we need to do now is change this expression to the like this number at the end of this expression to the number of inputs that we have, so 3. And on a text 3D, we also want to change the cache size to the same value, and also press pulse. Now we have the 3 different bananas in here, and you might guess it, we now have a lot of banana particles, and this is probably the most funky visual I've ever created. It's actually beautiful and everything I ever needed in my life. Interactive banana particles. yeah, all right. So now you can go ahead and make them even bigger. And yeah, feel free to add any kind of textures. Feel free to change all of this stuff in here, the forces, especially play with the forces. And the optical flow, like change different, like try different sort of feelings, like or like feels of how you interact with them. Change the threshold, and yeah, that is it for this tutorial. I really hope you enjoyed it. And there's more Kinect tutorials coming for sure. I just got a V1 myself. I'm gonna get it in Azure at some point, and I want to make this playlist of interactive art because it's a lot of fun to make, and Kinects are amazing. And yeah, if you want to support me, or if you want to have like more videos, more files and stuff like that, you can check out my Patreon. It's linked in the description. And yeah, otherwise I just hope you're well, and I'll see you on the next video.